Excuse me.
Welcome back, everyone. With the new Superman movie coming out in a couple of weeks, it seems everyone is doing their own retrospectives of Man of Steel. Unfortunately, most of them that I've seen have been negative, and seem to be throwing a lot more hate at Zack Snyder again. Not sure if everyone is revisiting Man of Steel in hopes of bringing back the hate for Zack Snyder, so when they go and see James Gunn's new Superman movie, it will look like a masterpiece. Based on the trailers, I will admit it looks and sounds like it's going to be epic. The bright and colorful look of the film reminds me of The Flash. Oh, it's cause they have the same cinematographer. The film also looks to have plenty of jokes and serious moments, but we will have to see. Now, if you guys have been watching my channel and listening to the Time Pals podcast, then you already know I'm a big Zack Snyder fan. I love all of his movies and think they are modern day epics with great stories, awesome action, and beautiful scenes to look at. Sure, there's plenty to nitpick, but that's something you can do with any movie you are trying to ruin for yourself. I can understand his movies aren't for everyone, but when people make videos to nitpick the tiniest of things, which either the movie addresses, or you can make up a reason in your head to have it make sense. Otherwise, it tells me people are trying to hate on this film, like they have some sort of agenda because it was directed by Zack Snyder instead of Christopher Nolan. Instead of watching CinemaSins, which is trying to find reasons to not like or even hate a film, it's better to watch Cinema Wins since he's actually trying to find everything great about a film, even the bad ones, like Star Wars Episode 9. So in this video, I want to take a look back at Man of Steel and why it holds up as one of the best movies ever made. Address some of the common complaints I keep hearing about, and anything else I found interesting during the making of the film. Some quick history. After WB and DC tried making a strange sequel to Superman 1 and 2 while ignoring 3 and 4, we got Superman Returns in 2006, which didn't do very well, grossing just short of $400 million on a $270 million budget. From here, I think WB and DC knew Superman had to be rebooted, perhaps with a more realistic take, since people complained about Returns trying to be a movie from the past instead of something new and fresh. The studio considered many writers, but long story short, David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan were writing the script for The Dark Knight Rises. However, David spent most of his time working on a Superman script. When Nolan read it, he said he would produce it. He pitched it to Warner Brothers and they signed off on it. While many directors were considered, Nolan called up Zack Snyder and asked if he would be interested in making a Superman movie.
My friend Christopher Nolan called me and said, "Hey Zack, would you have any interest in making a Superman movie? David Goyer and I wrote a Superman script and I don't think I want to do it. Do you have any interest in it?" And I was like, yes, yeah.
Going into this movie, I was really excited, mainly to see the action scenes. I wanted to see Superman flying around, fighting Zod in Metropolis, and I was not disappointed. Right away, I wanted to see the movie again after watching it. However, reviews were mixed, which surprised me. I felt people weren't taking the time to actually understand the deeper meaning behind the film, as well as just how realistic and compelling this Superman is compared to other interpretations. The Superman we used to know was all about being hopeful and fighting for truth and justice. He would do his best to save people or prevent disasters. The perfect all-good being we should all strive to be. The guy who always got back up no matter how many times he was beaten down. I've recently rewatched the first two Superman movies, and it still has that cartoony feel to it. That's not a bad thing, but watching it today, the story moves really quickly. The story on Krypton, then Superman landing on Earth, goes through high school, Jonathan's heart attack, then Clark finds the Fortress of Solitude, and becomes Superman in like the first 20 minutes of the film. There's like no time to breathe and take in each scene. I do still like to rewatch the animated adventures and even Justice League. Then comes Man of Steel, which takes a more realistic approach to Superman, asking the question, if someone with godlike powers showed up one day, I don't think we would be super excited to see him like in the other movies. We would be scared and cautious of this new super being. Plus, technology nowadays makes a Superman feel like gods are fighting among us, which is something Zack has said in many interviews. He approached the DC heroes as modern-day gods living amongst us. just like ancient cultures perceived their gods during their time. Okay, let's revisit the movie. It starts off with the usual movie studio logos: Warner Brothers, Legendary, DC Comics, and Nolan's company, Syncopy. Which, by the way, all the glyphs and writings are an actual language that they hired someone to create a Kryptonian language. The best way to start off anyone's origin story is their actual birth, Kal-El. However, this is also important to show because, as we will learn, Kal was the first natural birth in centuries. Now we quickly jump to Jor-El talking to the council about them harvesting the core has accelerated the process to implode the planet. This could be a reference to our world being worried about exhausting all of our natural resources, leading to our doom. He tells them it's too late to save their world, but asks them to give him the codex to save their race. Then we get an explosive entrance to our villain, General Zod. He claims to have disbanded this council and taken over as leader. We get a 300 reference.
This is madness! This is madness!
He asks Jor-El to join him and decides what bloodlines will live and die. Jor-El refuses because he doesn't like the idea of Zod getting to decide who lives and who dies, as well as fighting his own people. As he's taken away, he fights off the guards and escapes. We watch some cool looking ships fighting and getting blown up. Jor-El then calls for his writing creature, Haraka. Also, I love the music. It's intense and epic. Hans Zimmer mentioned he got a bunch of the greatest drummers in the industry for this. Now Jor-El reaches somewhere and goes for a swim. He grabs the codex and swims back. Zod's ship then shoots at him, causing him to fall. Haraka catches him and flies him back to their house, avoiding a crashing ship, which still looks awesome to watch. But Haraka looks injured and crashes. Jor-El puts the codex above Kal, and then they look at the readings for Earth. Laura is worried he will be an outcast.
How? He'll be a god to them.
Laura has doubts about sending him as any mother would be, but Jor-El reminds her that Krypton is doomed and this is his only chance. Helix says attack ships are on their way. They say their goodbyes to Kal. Jor-El then uploads the codex into Kal, infusing all of Krypton's DNA into his cells. Then they send him into his pod to prepare for the launch. Zod arrives and orders his troops to fire on the main door. Perhaps he has an earpiece or a wireless microphone on him, or his suit. Heck, maybe someone on the ship relayed this message to the other ships. I'm going on a tangent here because people like that guy with the glasses tried making fun of this scene like it was some plot hole. How could they hear him? Use your f***ing imagination, dude. Anyway, the ship prepares to launch. Zod and his two bodyguards walk in. Jor-El tells him this is a chance to save all of Krypton, and tells him they had a child, and he was their people's first natural birth in centuries, so Kal can forge his own destiny. Zod says this is heresy and commands his guards to destroy it. Jor-El takes out the guards and then starts fighting Zod, leaving a big scar on him. Zod tries to beg for Lara to abort the launch, but she hits the button anyway. Zod then screams and draws a weapon to stab Jor-El. Lara runs over to mourn his death and tells Zod,
"And he's beyond your reach."
Zod then orders a gunship to bring it down, but it gets destroyed and Zod has to surrender. Then we cut to his trial where he and his loyal soldiers are sentenced to the Phantom Zone. Zod lets out a tangent and tries to strike fear into Lara that he will find Kal, and says it several times to make sure she understands how serious he is. Some people like to make fun of this scene because he says it too many times, but imagine, you just made someone so mad that as they walk away or the police are dragging them away, they keep staring at you and keep saying something like, "I will find out where you live," or "I will find out where your family lives." That would strike fear in just about anyone, knowing that this person, someday, he may come and find you or your family. Zod and his soldiers get frozen and then placed in dick-looking pods. I think Zach likes to do this sort of thing just to mess with the ratings board. Or Zach likes to try and put nudity in his movies. But since this one had to be PG-13, that meant no dicks, unlike in Watchmen or Twilight of the Gods. He did this in the PG-13 version of Rebel Moon. That shows just how creative he can be. So Zod's ship goes through a portal into the Phantom Zone while we get to listen to more awesome, powerful Zimmer music. Then Lara watches as the planet implodes. She tells Kal to make a better world than theirs. I did find it interesting that they changed the lore to not have Brainiac destroy Krypton. Then we watch Kal's ship arrive at Earth and we jump forward to Deadliest Catch. Kal is now Clark Kent on Earth, played by Henry Cavill. Fun fact, while he was in the middle of playing World of Warcraft, Zack Snyder tried calling him to let him know he got the part to play Superman, but chose to ignore the call to keep playing. He must have been in the middle of a dungeon or raid, so I can understand that.
But, like, did you hear the phone ringing?
I did.
And you chose to ignore it?
Absolutely.
Did you win the video game?
Sadly, no.
Clark walks over to pick up some rope, but almost gets crushed. Luckily, a crewmate pushes him out of the way. Now quickly, before you type in the comments, I already know you guys are going to ask, how come that guy was able to push Clark out of the way, but there's a guy later on that tries pushing Clark, but it didn't work? Well, I think it's just because Clark is distracted. He has a lot on his mind and isn't trying to use any of his power or strength to protect himself right now. So that's all it takes to be able to push Superman over. The captain then says to secure the deck after getting a distress call from an oil rig. The nearby rescue chopper says to leave it. The remaining crew are considered dead. Well, Superman tries anyway to save them by climbing it. Then Superman pulls open the door and gets the crew out to the helipad where the chopper makes one last pass. They see them and start picking them up. Wait, didn't people complain that Superman wasn't rescuing people or doing enough rescuing? I counted at least 6 people there. So stop making that complaint because he saves a lot of people in the movie. And then we get a not so subtle reference to the movie title, Man of Steel. Get it? Then we get a flashback. Clark is a kid where he is struggling to control his powers of X-ray vision and super hearing. He runs out of the classroom and hides in a closet. Then he gets mad when the teacher tells him he called his mother. He uses his heat vision to burn the doorknob. His mom tells him to just focus on her voice, and this helps him get control of his powers and learn how to deal with it. Then he wakes up and sees whales. Then later swims to shore and shows off all that hard work Henry Cavill had to go through to get those muscles. Makes me want to work out and get a six-pack. But I heard he had to work his ass off at least 2.5 hours every day and eating something like 5,000 calories. But it definitely paid off.
Do you still look like that?
No, I look nothing like that now.
Oh.
That's sort of...
Clark sees a school bus drop off some kids, which reminds him of another important flashback. A bully starts picking on Clark when the tire pops on the bus and it spins out of control and goes into a river. It begins to sink and everyone would have died, but suddenly it gets pushed onto shore. Clark saved a bunch of kids, including the bully. Now we get to one of the most talked about scenes in the movie, and it's the start of one of the important themes of the entire movie, choice. Here Clark made a choice which was going to have some consequences. The bully and his mom came over to the Kents to talk about the incident. They saw it as an act of God. Obviously, the other kids would have started talking about this experience as well. Clark was on track to being revealed, but Jonathan then has this important talk with Clark that he has to keep this side of himself a secret until he is ready. Right now, as a kid, he definitely is not ready for the responsibility of playing God to the people of Earth. Could you imagine being his age and suddenly revealing to the world that you are an alien and have these godlike powers? What kind of person would you be? Ironically, there was a movie called Brightburn which tells the story of what if totally not Superman became a villain at a young age, which was written by Brian Gunn, James Gunn's brother, and Mark Gunn, James Gunn's cousin. Would you be ready at that age? Do you think you would become Superman or the kid from Brightburn? That's why when Clark asked him what was he supposed to do, just let him die? So we know right away Clark wants to do the right thing and protect the innocent, but he is struggling with trying to figure out how can he do that while remaining a secret? It's an impossible choice. He ends up making the tough choice to save them but risk his secret getting out. So when asking his dad what other choice did he have, that's why he says maybe. Because Clark will have to make tough choices like that later in life. There's never a right answer. For now, he wants Clark to remain a secret until he is ready for this responsibility. Then Clark asks, why did God do this to him? But instead, John tells him the truth. He shows him the pod he came in and the command key, showing him that he is not from this world, and that one day he will have to make a choice, whether to stand proud in front of the human race or not. Again, the movie is making it clear that it's about Clark Kent, aka Kal-El, is going to have to make tough choices that will shape him into becoming Superman. He then goes on to say that Clark was sent here for a reason, and even if it takes him the rest of his life, he must find out what that reason is.
Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?
You are my son.
Then we cut to Clark Kent working at a bar. He overhears from some soldiers about something up north they've discovered and calling it an anonymous object. but Clark is more concerned about his coworker getting inappropriately touched. He tries to defuse the situation, but the guy wants to escalate it. The guy throws his drink in Clark's face to embarrass him, and tries to push him, but meets the immovable object. Seems like Clark is about to do something, but his coworker tells him it's not worth it. Clark realizes that even though he could easily crush this guy or embarrass him back, he doesn't want to be that person. So he makes the choice to walk away. But the guy wants to be a dick one last time and throws something at him, which Clark then decides to do something. Later that night, the guy finds his truck completely destroyed. Clark still isn't perfect, but I think we can kind of relate to him. He tried walking away from an asshole, but if they keep being a dick like that, then I'm sure most of us would have done something like that to get back at him. Clark then continues making his way north to find this new object. Now we meet Lois Lane, starring Amy Adams, and blink before you miss it, that's Clark. I'll admit the first time I saw this movie, I didn't know that was him. Lois Lane arrives and meets Colonel Harding and introduces her to Dr. Emil Hamilton. They expected her tomorrow, but it's why she showed up early to find out what they're really doing here. They found something in the ice, and readings show it's nearly 20,000 years old. They drop her off in her room, and sometime later she goes out to take pictures and then discovers Clark walking around up on a cliff. She follows him into a cave that he carved out from his heat vision. Clark finds the ship, and it turns out to be a Kryptonian ship. He places his command key into the slot, but encounters a robot guard that attacks him. He fights it a little to push the key all the way in which seems to tell the guard he is friendly, and all the lights turn on. Then hears his name and sees someone walk down a hallway. Lois comes in while Clark walks around and follows the figure. Lois then encounters the robot guard. Clark then finds some pods of dead bodies, but one of the pods is open. There has been many theories as to what it could mean. Supergirl? Or some other Kryptonian, or maybe even another alien has been on Earth all this time. Then we cut back to Lois, who stupidly takes a picture of the robot guard, which attacks her. Clark hears this and comes to her rescue and crushes the guard, saving her. Then looks at Lois and sees she is bleeding internally. Now, I do wonder how his heat vision works. Is it a limitless laser that keeps going? Or can Clark control how powerful and how far the laser goes? Because this tells me he can control where it goes since he cauterizes her wound. Then we cut to the outside and watch as the ship takes off out of the ice and goes somewhere else. As Lois Lane reads her article over what happened, we watch as she wakes up and gets rescued. Then we cut to her being back at the Daily Planet and concludes her findings that aliens are living among us. But Perry White won't run the story, played by Lawrence Fishburne. Then Lois Lane goes to a bar and tells this guy Woodburn to leak her story online. She's doing this in hopes to find Clark. Then we get a shot of a polar bear, which could be a subtle reference to a previous Superman movie that featured polar bear guards at the Fortress of Solitude. Clark then meets his dad in the ship, or at least an AI copy of him. Nice try how it should have ended, making that joke about Lara couldn't have her own hologram. I imagine creating an almost exact copy of somebody would require a lot of power and memory space to recreate somebody. But it's not a plot hole, just a creative way for Cal to meet his dad and learn more about his people, including his name, Kal-El. Now we do get a big info dump, which does turn off a lot of people's brains. It's a cool scene to watch. Jor-El says Krypton used to expand around the universe, sending thousands of ships to settle around habitable worlds for them, including this ship. They tried using machines to reshape environments to their needs. For 100,000 years, they flourished, until they established artificial population control. They abandoned the outposts on all the other worlds and used up all their natural resources. As the world was coming to an end, General Zod attempted a coup, while Jor-El and Lara took steps to save Cal, as we already know. Then takes him to the Genesis Chamber, where every Kryptonian was designed to fulfill a predetermined role in their society, such as a worker, a warrior, a leader, a janitor, maybe even a stripper. Jor-El then brings back that important theme I mentioned earlier, choice.
The element of choice, of chance. What if a child dreamed of becoming something other than what society had intended for him or her? What if a child aspired to something greater?
You see what I mean? Even his alien dad said he was born on the idea of choice. Since Kryptonians had their choice of deciding who they want to be taken away, and Zod is the result of that. Superman will become the idea and symbol of deciding on who you want to be by making your own choices. Cal asked why his parents didn't come with him. Jor-El says they couldn't because they were still tied to the old Krypton. They were products of the failures of their world as much as Zod. Cal now realizes he is alone. However, Jor-El tells him Cal is as much of a child of Earth as he is of Krypton and can embody the best of both worlds, then shows him his new suit. Some say this is kind of weird that his suit was here for 20,000 years and ready for him, but who knows? Maybe his command keys started up some system on the ship to create his own clothes with his family's crest. Or maybe the House of El has been around for that long and it just happens to be there ready for somebody like Cal to come and take it for himself. Anyway, Jor-El goes on to say while humans might be different in some areas to Kryptonians, Jor-El believes that it is a good thing if it means they won't make the same mistakes as they did. Not if Cal guides them by giving them hope, which is what the House of El means. I know I'm quoting a lot of this movie, but it's because the movie addresses all the concerns people have, but they either ignore this part or forgot it and decided to go make a video for YouTube on why this movie is bad for stupid reasons that get addressed in the movie. As Cal walks out into the sun, symbolizing a new dawn for him, Jor-El explains the sun is what makes him stronger. Now he can become more powerful than he could ever imagine. The only thing to do now is to keep pushing his limits. Cal begins to try and learn how to fly by jumping really hard and at first seems to be doing it, but loses control and falls back down through a mountain. He seems to take a moment to reflect and gather his thoughts to really hone in on his power. Cal then drops to one knee to gather energy and launches himself. These cool shots of Superman flying around are so awesome to see, along with the Hans Zimmer epic score of this new Superman theme. Watching this just makes you want to be able to fly like Superman. How cool would that be? Now we catch up with Lois interviewing everyone that had encountered Clark, eventually leading her to Smallville, finding Pete Ross at the IHOP, which then led her to Martha. Then she goes over to a graveyard where Jonathan Kent's gravestone is. As the camera circles around her, we see Clark appear. She asks him some questions, but Clark tells her that he doesn't want his story to be told. Then we get the controversial tornado scene. Really quick, Clark has an argument with Jonathan and says he isn't his real dad. But before he could apologize, there's suddenly a big tornado. Everyone takes cover under the overpass. Yes, I know about the wind tunnel effect, but it's not a plot hole for the movie. Just something to let everyone know you don't want to do that because it's very dangerous. Also, people complain about this moment of a mom claiming her kid is stuck, but in the very next shot, Jonathan just pulls her out. Maybe there was an extended scene of him trying to get her unstuck, but they just decided to trim it out. Again, it's not a plot hole, just more CinemaSins pointless nitpicking. Then Jonathan goes to save the family dog, but then a car crashes down on his ankle. He crawls out, but can't run. Clark is about to fly over and save him, but Jonathan raises his hand to tell him no. This is more powerful than what we got in the old Superman movie. We meet Jonathan and Martha, they find Clark, they witness his powers, then he dies of a heart attack. And the lesson is, no matter how powerful Superman was, he still couldn't save Jonathan. And all that happened like within 5 minutes of that movie. Man of Steel shows us Jonathan was willing to sacrifice his own life for Clark. So he didn't reveal himself before he was ready for the responsibility of becoming Superman. Clark even says this. I mean, were you guys even listening?
I let my father die because I trusted him, because he was convinced that I had to wait, that the world was not ready.
Lois understands his story, and so when she goes to the Daily Planet to confront Perry, after finding out her story got leaked online, she decides to drop the story. Perry is mad at first, but is surprised she suddenly dropped the story. He believes she found something, but thinks she's doing the right thing because...
Can you imagine how people on this planet would react if they knew there was someone like this out there?
Clark returns home, tells Martha he found out where he came from. She gets emotional and talks about when they first found him. She was worried that the day would come when they would take him away from her. Then we cut to a military base and meet General Swanwick, played by Harry Lennox. Now, if you saw Zack Snyder's Justice League, I'm assuming he's supposed to be Martian Manhunter in disguise. He's informed by Dr. Hamilton that some kind of spaceship is coming into orbit of Earth. Soon all of the Earth is watching the news, then we get the broadcast from Zod. requesting Earth to hand over Superman or watch this world suffer the consequences. By the way, the words he says, "You are not alone," is not just a Michael Jackson song, but more importantly a quote from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which Zack Snyder is a big advocate for, especially if you hear about the behind the scenes of what happened during the filming of Justice League. The next day, Lois is watching the news and hears her name get mentioned, then sees the FBI pull up and tries to escape. Zack has said in a behind the scenes they tried shooting this scene as a one-shot, but unfortunately it had to be shortened. Then we see Clark at a church reflecting on another flashback. A bully pulls young Clark out of a truck and throws him at a fence to try and fight, but Clark refuses to get up and fight back. Oh, and Clark is holding a book about Plato. There's a deeper meaning behind this, but I don't have time to go into that. More importantly, we see Clark bent the fence. His dad walks over and asks if he's alright. Clark says he really wanted to hit that kid so bad. Jonathan even says part of him wanted him to, but if he did, what then? Would it have made a difference? Would it really have made him feel better? Jonathan tells him that someday he will have to decide what kind of man he wants to be when he grows up. Because good character or bad, he's going to change the world. Then we cut back to Clark sitting down and talking to a priest. It's almost like Clark knows the time has come for him to decide, and the only place he thinks he can get answers is in the house of God. He tells the priest he's the one they are looking for, and what he should do. Clark feels the right choice is to surrender himself, but doesn't trust Zod to keep his word. However, he thinks humanity can't be trusted either. As Clark leaves, the priest says sometimes in life you need to take a leap of faith. The trust part comes later. I'm sure everyone saw the Jesus reference in the background. I mean, earlier Clark was doing the arms out pose, and it won't be the last. We see the military prepare for Superman's arrival. He tells General Swanwick he would like to speak to Lois Lane. They take him to her in handcuffs, which is probably my favorite meme. They talk for a bit and Lois mentions about the S and Superman tells her it means hope. Before she can say the words Superman, Dr. Hamilton comes over the mic. Superman demonstrates his X-ray vision by telling Hamilton what he has in his pocket. Swanwick then demands Superman to reveal his true identity, but Superman walks up to the glass while everyone takes a step back out of fear. Swanwick stays where he is, totally confirming he is Martian Manhunter in disguise. Superman makes it clear that they will never control him, but that doesn't mean they have to be enemies. Swanwick says he has to hand him over to Zod, and Superman tells him to do what he needs to do. We cut to the outside and Superman thanks Lois for believing in him, then tells her to go as the ship approaches. We meet the Kryptonian woman from earlier, Feora. She greets Kal and then walks over to demand Lois to come with her. The Colonel says no at first, but Lois agrees to go with them. As they go to the Kryptonian ship, they give her a rebreather. Kal finally meets Zod, but feels sick because of the change in atmosphere. He passes out and has a strange vision. Zod speaks with him about what happened. After Krypton was destroyed, Zod and his loyal soldiers were brought out of the Phantom Zone. They then modified the ship to be able to travel through space, similar to Superman's ship. They sought out the old outposts and salvaged what they could, armor, weapons, and a world engine. Then they detected a distress beacon that Clark activated with his command key. Now Zod tells him that Kal can save what remains of his race. The world engine lands, Zod mentions the Codex, and with it, Krypton can live again, but on Earth. We get this cool shot transitioning the world to destruction, and technically we are looking at Black Suit Superman. Kal asks what happens to Earth, and Zod implies that all the humans must die first. Kal refuses to be a part of this as he sinks into the skulls. Then Kal wakes up and Zod tells him he killed Jor-El. He claims it haunts him, but makes it clear he would do it again in order to save his people no matter what. Zod heads out with 2 ships to Smallville. The military watches them, and Swanwick mentions the word of the day is Trident, which I remember people treated this as an Aquaman reference. Kal gets his blood taken. Lois is thrown into some room, which, interesting enough, this Kryptonian is played by Samantha Wynn, who came back to play Chambers in Army of the Dead, another Zack Snyder movie. Lois puts the command key in the slot and Jor-El appears behind her. He says he's uploading into the ship's mainframe right now and tells her how they can stop the Kryptonians and send them back into the Phantom Zone. Jor-El changes the ship's atmosphere to human compatibility, which makes Superman strong again. Lois takes out a few bad guys, and Jor-El leads her to an escape pod. He says the Phantom Drives are essential to stopping them, and move her head to the left. She gets away, but the pod is damaged. Superman gets up from the table and asks his dad if what Zod said about the Codex was true. Jor-El tells Kal to break open the wall, and then talks about they wanted him to learn what it meant to be human first. Then when the time was right, he could be the bridge between two peoples. And then he sees Lois is in trouble. Jor-El tells him he can save her, and he can save all of them. Then we get the arms out pose, which you already know the reference, but I don't see it as a bad thing. I feel like Superman does it to feel weightlessness. Almost like when, you're in a pool and lay on your back to float on the water. Most people put their arms out, but I don't think they're doing it to refer to the cross. Anyway, Superman then goes to save Lois, getting her out in time. Zod arrives at the Kent farm. Lois and Superman share a moment together. Lois mentions something about they looked into her mind, so she must have gone through something similar to what Superman went through. Then Superman must hear Zod is arriving at the farm, so speeds off to help his mom. Zod demands to know where the pod he arrived in. Feora grabs Martha by the throat, and she looks at the barn. Then Feora jumps through it and opens the pod to not find the Codex. She tells Zod, and he gets really angry and throws the truck into the house. Then yells at Martha to tell him where the Codex is. Then Superman appears and takes Zod on a ride and hilariously beats him in the face.
You think you can threaten my mother?
Crashing through some buildings. Zod throws his cape off and his helmet was damaged, and now Zod is experiencing what Superman had to go through as a kid. As Superman is watching Zod suffer, a ship arrives and shoots Superman, then lands and two Kryptonians take Zod away. Then Superman sees two other Kryptonians walking down the street towards him. He walks towards them with the look of uncertainty, but he knows he has to try and stop them from hurting anyone else. He even tells people to get inside, for what good it'll do in the coming battle. Colonel Harding is approaching with the military. Before Superman and the two Kryptonians go at it, the incoming jets start attacking, knocking Superman into this building and one of the Kryptonians back. Then they try to attack again, but this time the Kryptonian jumps at one, squeezes the pilot into liquid dust, then crashes the jet. Feora jumps at the other one and almost gets to it, but Superman saves the pilot. They crash into the IHOP from earlier, and Feora starts beating up Superman and talking about how they are more evolved than him and how evolution always wins. But Superman keeps fighting anyway. Then the other Kryptonian shows up to make it a 2v1. It's a really cool action scene, especially this part, catching Superman in mid-flight. I want to say Superman is trying to draw them away from the city, but they keep jumping on him and taking him down. I'm not sure if this will be important for later, but Superman uses his heat vision and it looks like it burns them. Superman saves another pilot before getting punched away. Colonel Harding crashes. Feora then takes out a bunch of soldiers while Superman's doing his best against the other Kryptonian. Eventually he lifts him up in the air and super punches him into my dad's favorite train. Then it looks like Feora is about to kill Hardy in a knife fight and says,
"A good death is its own reward."
But Superman comes in at the last second, saving Hardy. This also damages her helmet. She is able to say for every human Superman saves, they will kill 1,000,000 more. Then a train comes from out of nowhere and takes Superman through a Sears. Feora gets hit by a missile. Then a Kryptonian gunship takes out two jets to then pick up the two Kryptonians. The soldiers then close in on Superman, but when he shows himself, they all lowered their weapons, and Hardy says this man isn't our enemy. Superman then flies off to check on his mom. She says not to worry, it's only stuff that can be replaced, but Superman says she can't. Then mentions this codex could save his people, but he doesn't think the Kryptonians have any intention on sharing this world. Then Lois shows up and says she knows how to stop them. Zod, meanwhile, is told by his scientist that he found the codex is within Kal-El. Zod simply asks if Kal needs to be alive to extract the codex, and he says no. Then orders for the World Engine to be released, along with Hans Zimmer's epic score. It lands in the South Indian Ocean, while sounding almost like a TIE fighter. The other ship then orbits Metropolis. Also, did you know this is Adam Driver? It's true, he made a cameo in Man of Steel. I'm kidding, it's not, but it sure does look like him. Everyone watches the ship as it prepares to initiate terraforming. Yes, it sounds like dubstep. Swanwick lets us know that we are on a timer for humanity's destruction if this machine isn't stopped. They have begun turning Earth into Krypton. Then we get our first mention of the word Superman.
Colonel Hardy's on his way in and he's got Superman in tow.
Superman?
The alien, sir. That's what they're calling him, Superman.
Now we hear the plan of how our heroes are going to stop the villain. In short, they need to crash Superman's pod into the Kryptonian ship to cause a singularity, which will suck all the Kryptonians back into the Phantom Zone. Superman first needs to go to the South Indian Ocean and destroy the world engine before the gravity field can continue to expand. He takes off in this beautiful shot. Then we watch more destruction going on, and Zod gives Feora command so he can go off to find the scout ship. Hardy and his troops head to Metropolis with the package. Then we cut to Zod taking his mask off, so he can focus and master control of his powers just like Superman did. He goes into the ship and places his command key to take control. Jor-El tries to tell Zod to stop, and despite telling him he will not let him use the codex like this, Zod says his command key has taken over and the ship is now under his command. Superman, meanwhile, tries to get close to the world engine, but the atmosphere around it makes him weak. Then it attacks him with some tentacle claw thing. While that's going on, jets try firing missiles at the Kryptonian ship, but their missiles miss because of the gravity field. With missiles missing and hitting innocent people and crashing into buildings, Perry, of course, now orders everyone to evacuate the building. I mean, I'm sure many of us would have left the building way before that point. We see Superman continue fighting the tentacles. More fighter jets try getting closer to shoot their missiles, but still has no effect. A jet almost hits Perry, Jenny, and Lombard. Then they run from a building collapsing and barely escape it. By the way, this is some of the best CGI I've seen, and it still holds up well today. Also, they filmed this in Chicago. Then we cut back to the scout ship. Jor-El tells him Kryptonians and humans can coexist, but Zod doesn't want his people to suffer like Kal-El did trying to adapt. Jor-El tells him not to commit genocide, but Zod doesn't care because he's arguing the merits with a ghost. Jor-El tells him that both of them are ghosts. The old Krypton is gone. But Zod doesn't want to hear it and asks if the computer can terminate this Jor-El AI. Then Jor-El's final words are,
"My son is twice the man you were, and he will finish what we started. I can promise you that."
Zod tells him he will harvest the codex from Kal-El's corpse and rebuild Krypton atop his bones. Then presses the command key to kill Jor-El a second time, and then takes the ship to Metropolis. Superman begins to struggle against the claws and is thrown into the laser. Perry finds Jenny trapped under debris. He and Lombard try to free her while the gravity field slowly gets closer to crush Jenny. Hardy asks permission to drop the package, but Swanwick says negative. They are still waiting for Superman to destroy the world engine. Suddenly, we see an arm and see Superman slowly getting up. The gravity field is getting closer, and then we see Christopher Reeve? No, it's still Henry Cavill, guys, but it sure does look pretty damn close. Zach has said they didn't do this on purpose or anything, but hey, if that's what you guys see, then hey, that's cool. Superman flies up and punches through to destroy the world engine. Swanwick gives the order to arm the package and then drop it. Lois heads to the back of the plane. While Superman is exhausted, he reaches up to feel the sun's rays. If you didn't know, the radiation from the sun regenerates Superman. Then Lois tries putting the command key in, but it seems to get stuck. Hardy comes down to ask what the holdup is. Then Zod comes in, and I'm getting Star Wars Episode 4 vibes.
Target that aircraft. I have you now.
Then Superman at the last second hits the ship to make it miss. Then as he heats up his heat vision, Zod yells at Superman, if he destroys this ship, he destroys Krypton.
Krypton had its chance!
Then lasers the ship, causing it to crash through some buildings. Then Feora hops in a pod to go attack the ship. Dr. Hamilton figures out if he just turns the pod a little, it seems to work now. As a soldier tells Lois to move away from the edge, Feora breaks through the floor, causing Mr. Windhelm to go screaming out the plane. Feora takes out 2 soldiers and goes after Hardy. Hamilton pushes the command key all the way in to activate the pod. Then Hardy tells Feora the same thing she said to him.
A good death is its own reward.
And then drops the plane into the ship. Lois goes flying out the back. The ship and Kryptonians get sucked into the black hole. Superman pushes some rubble over and flies up to save Lois. Now, another big complaint is why is Lois the only thing falling while everything else, including Superman, being sucked in? Well, it could be only things that have been affected or used by the Phantom drives, since the ship and all the Kryptonians, including Superman, used it to get to Earth. Again, not a plot hole, just people not trying to use their brain for creative reasons. Now, if you didn't know, originally the movie was supposed to end here. Superman saves Lois, all the Kryptonians, including Zod, were supposed to be sucked into the Phantom Zone, but come on, you know everyone would have been up in arms complaining that Superman didn't really get to fight Zod. To no surprise, Zack felt there needed to be a final fight between Zod and Superman. So after Superman and Lois kiss and everyone gathers to look at the destruction, and Jenny says he saved us. Then they hear a rumble by the ship. Superman flies over to listen to Zod talk about his new motivations. He is upset to see that they could have built a new Krypton, but Kal chose the humans over them. Zod says he only exists to protect Krypton because that was the sole purpose for which he was born. And now that he has no people, he feels his soul was taken from him by Superman. Then he charges and super punches Superman across the field. Then Zod mentions he will make Kal suffer by taking the lives of every human. But Superman says Zod is a monster and he's gonna stop him. Now we get one of the coolest and epic fight scenes in modern day. Superman taking Zod through buildings, Zod getting stronger by using his own heat vision, which takes down this building, Superman barely escaping it but crashing into a parking structure, then walking out with barely a scratch on him. Zod kicks a LexCorp truck at him and Superman slides through to avoid it. But funny enough, you can kind of see him turn around to look at it like, whoops, maybe I should have stopped it so it wouldn't cause more damage to the structure. Then Zod starts punching Superman, creating shock waves, knocking him to the ground or knocking him away. Even a car falls on Superman to distract him so Zod can kick him away. Then uppercuts him to send him flying up this building. I mean, come on, people, this is awesome to watch. It really feels like watching two godlike beings fighting in a city. Zod then makes it clear there's only one way this ends. Either Kal dies or he does. Then they charge at each other again and cause a mega shockwave, destroying parts of the building and sending Zod flying towards a construction site. Superman flies up, lasers the steel beam, but still gets hit anyway. Zod tells him he was bred to be a warrior, trained his entire life to master his senses, then tears off his armor and shows he can fly now. Superman charges at him, and now we get the coolest flying fight scene. Superman doing his flying punch attack, which has been replicated many times even in the video game Injustice 2. Then watching Superman fly through the city looking for Zod is just so damn cool to watch. Then watching them fight and throw each other through building after building, grinding against the windows and walls.
Are you not entertained?
Thank you, Gladiator Jor-El. Especially this cool shot, watching Superman get grabbed by his cape and thrown through 5 buildings. Then they fight into space, and Zod grabs onto a Wayne satellite and throws it at Superman. Then they fight their way back down to Earth, through another building, and now Superman has Zod pinned. Which, now we are at the biggest controversy of the movie that everyone still talks about to this day. Now I know, they set this up specifically for Superman to have to make a choice. People would say, fly away with Zod, or just pin him to the ground. Basically, you want the fight to keep going. Well, that's nice and all, but it's time to start wrapping up this movie. So here we are. Zod is going to kill this family. Superman can't stop the laser himself. No, he can't cover Zod's eyes, it will burn him. He must keep him pinned here, otherwise Zod will just fly off and keep killing more innocents. Superman has to make a choice here and now. It's not an easy choice. You see him begging and screaming for Zod to stop. Zod only says, "Never." So Superman makes the choice to save this innocent family. After snapping his neck, Superman falls to his knees, knowing he just killed the only other Kryptonian. He is truly alone now. And the fact he made this conscious choice to kill another person. He is genuinely sad and angry. He is overcome with emotions about this that he just screams. I'm not sure how many of you can relate to something like that, but I think that's a justifiable reason to kill Zod. This topic has been talked about a lot by David, Zack, and Henry. Nolan didn't agree with it at first, but when he read this whole story and understood the circumstances, then it made sense why Superman would have to make a choice here. I even think they could have explored this more in the second movie if we got something like Man of Tomorrow. The debate of Superman never kills has been discussed many times, both in comics, animation, TV, and movies. I could go down the list of times when Superman has killed people in worse circumstances when he didn't need to, but he actually chose to.
In Superman number 1, he throws a man off a cliff. In Superman number 2, he destroys a munitions facility and kills everyone inside. In the same issue, Superman rather sadistically lets a terrorist choke to death on poison gas. He even taunts the guy as he's dying. But that was the old Superman. Let's move ahead a bit. In Action Comics 583, he murders Mr. Mxyzptlk. In Superman 75, he kills Doomsday. In Superman 82, he kills Hank Henshaw, whose consciousness was in the cyborg. In Justice League 22, he kills Dr. Light by melting his head. What about when he killed the Joker? That's just in the comics. What are some other examples? In the Adventures of Superman TV show, some guys find out Superman's identity and try to blackmail him. So Superman leaves them on the top of a mountain, where they fall to their death. In the last episode of Season 7 of Smallville, Clark kills Brainiac. In Superman 4, he drops Nuclear Man into a power plant, which kills him. In Superman Returns, when Superman sends the continent into space, he kills many of Lex's henchmen that are still on the surface of the thing. Never kills. This wasn't even the first time he killed Zod. In Superman 22, Superman killed Zod and the 2 other inmates that escaped from the Phantom Zone. Then in Superman 2, Superman strips Zod and the others of all their powers. This is worse than what he does in Man of Steel, because Zod is now powerless and at his mercy. What does he do? He breaks his hand and throws him off a cliff into the freezing Arctic waters. Non falls to his death, and Lois punches Ursa into the depths as well. But I guess it's okay because they joke about it.
This was a moment to show people one interpretation where he was forced to make that ultimate choice. And here's what kind of Superman he would be. Alright, I could go on and talk about it, but I really think this is a very compelling story moment for the Superman character. Future Superman don't have to follow this, but telling people Superman would never do this is just living in denial and want to avoid the question. Would Superman kill? And here we got an answer. Now I wonder if James Gunn will do something similar, because if even a single person dies because of Superman, I expect everyone to make the same argument online as they did with Man of Steel. Alright, let's wrap this up. Lois hugs Superman, then we cut to some time later. A surveillance drone crashes in front of Swanwick's car. Superman made it crash because he knows the military is trying to find out where he hangs his cape. People thought Henry Cavill's Superman was a huge dick for doing that. Oh right, because Superman doing this in Superman 2 was okay.
This order's to go.
He was just making it clear to them they need to stop trying, or more expensive equipment will get destroyed. Swanwick asks, what if one day he decides to act against America? But Superman says he grew up in Kansas and is about as American as it gets, and just wants to help, but it has to be on his own terms, and that Swanwick has to convince Washington of that. He asks what makes him think they will listen, so Superman simply says,
I don't know, General. Guess I'll just have to trust you.
Then we get the cheesy line,
I just think he's kinda hot.
Then Clark and Martha go to Jonathan's grave, and Clark says he wishes Jonathan could have been here to see it finally happen. Martha mentions he did see it. Then one last flashback of Clark having a red cape on and giving us the famous Superman pose, which Jonathan got to see. Then Martha asks what will Clark do when he's not saving the world. So he gets a job at the Daily Planet, setting things up for future Superman adventures. And Lois welcomes Clark to the planet, or you could interpret it as Lois welcoming Kal-El to the planet Earth, ending with Superman's awesome theme song. In conclusion, Man of Steel is still one of the greatest movies ever made. It's not as bad as people say. It's not confusing or lazy storytelling. It's all there for you to enjoy, or to have a good time making fun of. You know how people enjoy watching The Room? Well, I bet you if you hate this movie, you actually enjoy rewatching it just to hate on it. And that's not a bad thing. If that's your mindset, well, there's no hope for me to change your mind, but hey, that's fine. Everyone has their opinion. I just don't like the spread of misinformation about plot holes, or misunderstanding of certain scenes. The best video that addresses a lot of concerns for Man of Steel is Twin Perfect's video, Why You're Wrong About Man of Steel. Go watch it if you need further debunking of the ridiculous criticisms of this movie. I really think in today's internet, the only videos that seem to do well are the negative ones. It's almost like what Martha said in BVS was true. People hate what they don't understand. So instead of taking the time to understand the movie, they chose to just hate on it. However, I can't stop people from expressing their opinion, and if they truly just don't like the film, then, well, I guess that's fine, but to go onto YouTube and explain why the movie is so bad and say something that isn't true, or the movie actually addresses it, is where I felt like I needed to say something. I hope maybe myself and Twin Peaks, and even Good Bad Flicks has an old video about Man of Steel, who also addresses a lot of issues people complain about. There's many more fans out there defending this movie for you guys, and they all say it isn't as bad as you think, or perhaps thought at the time. The movie has and is still great, even today, and people are still talking about it. Zack makes very memorable, epic, and just plain awesome movies for anyone to rewatch. Even if you aren't taking the time to understand it, the action scenes alone are nothing like you've seen before. He was always trying to up the action and show something a little different. I can only imagine what Superman vs. Darkseid would have looked like. All we got for now is the animated show, where he even says this was a moment where he could finally cut loose a little. Now just imagine what Zack would have done to make that scene a reality on the big screen for Justice League Part 3. There's a lot more I could talk about, including a lot more behind the scenes stuff, things that Zack, David, and the cast have said in interviews, the color grading, the musical score, but I think that's enough for this video. I hope people rethink some of their views on this film and just grow to appreciate it. The nearly 500,000 Snyderverse fans on Facebook are planning on rewatching Man of Steel on July 11th to boycott the new Superman movie, which I will do to show my support, but I will admit, on July 12th, I am going to go see the new Superman movie to get my own opinion on James Gunn's interpretation of Superman. I love to watch movies, and I don't plan on hating this film. I'm just curious to see what kind of Superman he's decided to go with. And hopefully, it's a fun, entertaining movie to see with cool action scenes worth rewatching. So if you guys want me to make a review video, let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you love or hate Man of Steel and why. Maybe we can have a civil discussion about it. Anyway, like and subscribe, check me out on the Time Pals podcast, and maybe in March, I'll do a retrospective on Batman vs. Superman for its 10th anniversary, the Ultimate Edition, not the theatrical version. Then who knows when I'll do a retrospective on the legendary Zack Snyder's Justice League. Alright guys, I'll see you next time.